everything you experience in life will teach you something. The purpose of the technology is to reduce what I call the frictions and to increase the creativity. People think, oh my God, my job's going away.
All basic education will be definitely changed by this.
I've landed from another planet. I'm an alien.
Yeah.
I'm the real alien. You don't need to know how to code anymore. You need to know the business problem you're solving.
Definitely. Hi guys, my name is Anton Voroniuk and I'm happy to have you in our GenAI Revolution podcast. Our today's guest is Paul Siegel. He is founder of Starweaver. Hi, Paul.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Anton. Love to have the conversation.
Paul, tell us a little bit more about Starweaver. It's a tech with its history. We will definitely dive in AI and how you use AI, but can you share a little bit more about Starweaver?
Sure. The quick history is that I got involved. I was an investment banker for many years in the tech and in publishing businesses. I got into training through an acquisition of an old school training company. It evolved very rapidly from doing bank training and finance training for tech people. And before you know it, we got into the world of doing online education way back when, 15 years ago. And it evolved as an organization from, 7 people to 20 people to over 70 now, full time. So I got into it through an acquisition, but then the business, as many good businesses are, listen to the market, listen to your customers, and evolve to meet that need.
Tell about the revolution of training and education in your career. So you are the guy who are many years in this, and you started from old-fashioned corporate trainings. How did it start and how is right now moving when AI will teach everyone?
Sure. It's very interesting. So the company we acquired was called GlobeCon, and it was a traditional training company that did live workshops for bankers around the world. So what they tried to do in the late 90s, believe it or not, was become an e-learning company, which was both way ahead of its time, but also in a banking field that was very conservative and not very mobile. We decided to buy the business. We a group of 10 investors and I acquired the business, and I started running around the globe talking to customers, which I have always found to be the most successful way to build a business is to listen to what your customers really say. And listening to them, for me, maybe old school, is go see them. See what their reactions are, see what they're really saying. And so went to Australia and France and Germany and Canada, mostly outside the United States. We were based in New York at the time, and learned that they needed finance training and they needed live courses. So we did workshops in all of these many cities live, and we shipped in instructors, mostly from other countries. One thing turned into another, and what we used to have in our training programs were books, what we called pre-work, the old school. You go to a workshop, you get some books in advance. Great old school model. But we realized shipping these books around the world was a bit of a pain. Sometimes we had to update them and then ship them at the last minute. So what we did is we made these into e-learning courses. Now they were traditional at the time. They were what I would call page turners, low animation, mostly reading, kind of like an online Kindle or whatever it is. That evolved from one thing into another, where we started to go from teaching pure finance people and realizing that some of the biggest banks in the world, which we had, pretty much most of them, Deutsche Bank, Commerzbank, National Australia Bank, Bank America, Royal Bank of Canada, Royal Bank of Scotland, et cetera, all these huge banks.
What was your main disciplines? What you was teaching these banks?
We were teaching mostly corporate investment banking. So it wasn't like how to be a retail banker. It was derivatives, capital structure, corporate restructuring, mergers and acquisitions.
So you have very specific niche, very specific clients.
Very clear. And very traditional.
Very conservative clients.
Very conservative, but it was all fairly, evergreen, what we today would call evergreen content. And we still have that content.
Sure.
And the company was
I remember you still have these courses on Udemy.
Yes, some of them. And actually, those were evolutions, and I'll get to that in a second. So these were old school, and what the company had done and what we have evolved from is what they called development systems. So we weren't just going to take you a course. It was a curriculum. It was a pre-established curriculum, and each of the workshops, which could be 1 day, 3 day, 5 days, old school, also had these books, as I said, aligned to it. And then they had case studies. So everything was case study, hands-on driven. And what happened was, as we were running these things, we began to realize, well, a lot of the people who need this were not just the frontline bankers, but they were the people inside the tech organization. So one of my colleagues in London had a relationship with Bank America. We realized they needed an entire curriculum, a learning path. We designed a path from and most tech people know tech, but they don't know the domain. In so many industries, and this is relevant today in AI also. If you know AI, but you don't know how it applies in healthcare or in retail or what, so then you're kind of going to be lost, right? And particularly in a field like finance where there's so many esoteric subjects. Risk analytics. So what is a mortgage-backed security? It sounds like I understand what it is, but not really when you start getting into the math, et cetera, behind it. So we found this organization, Bank America. We created a very robust multi-year curriculum. It was live in-person courses in London, Chicago, New York, and Charlotte. It was online curriculums that they would go through. And it would evolve, from what we called foundations of finance to tools of the trade. We then realized, well, other banks seem to need the same thing. These major banks that I just mentioned, we went to them. They all had the same requirement. Then we scratched our head and realized, well, we're teaching these tech guys. What else do they need to know? Again, going to your customer and saying, what are your challenges? Project management, agile, of course, and then the tech. So then it rapidly evolved over the past 6 years where we were doing this. We had about 25 employees. We had about 75 instructors or so. And suddenly someone knocked on our door and says, you should be working with the big platforms. Well, actually, let me just jump back for a second. So as you just said, we had taken some of our courses, which were the page turners, literally. And then in 2008 or 2009, 10, I always thought, well, you've got to videotape these courses. So we videotaped someone teaching in a classroom. And you'll see some of our 20 plus courses on Udemy. The historic ones were literally someone teaching an esoteric subject in finance, swaptions, esoteric things in a...
It's definitely evergreen content.
What's that?
It's definitely
evergreen. And some of the numbers change, but they basically are within the same context. So we videotaped these in a classroom. And at that time, the new technology was a smartboard. You weren't using a chalkboard. You had a smartboard. And we used Camtasia. And you could write on the board and capture it on the PowerPoint slides. We took the video, we took the PowerPoint slide, and literally we had wedding photographers who were good at video. It's kind of funny, but these are very capable people. A new field for them, so a new opportunity for them. We shot them, and we do very well with those courses. They're some of the top-rated finance courses, not the most exciting in terms of their strategy for. So we were doing this in 2010. I went out to see Udemy, and I began to meet that company at that time. So fast forward 6 years ago, someone said to us, "You really need to talk to these other platforms." So we started to talk to some of the platforms, and in the past 18 months, we went from a dozen and a half people as full-time employees and a network of, say, 50 to 75 independent instructors to over 70 colleagues now full-time employees and over 300 instructors around the globe. And so it was the evolution of realizing we were doing something good, at least people thought there was good, but we were kind of selling it to the wrong market. We were selling it to enterprises, which was a very slow process. And so we evolved into working with platforms that had realized that, and let me just, without talking too much, one of the things I had always done when we did a workshop in Australia or in Paris or in New York was we always had an Excel spreadsheet and we managed the process.
Some framework.
And it was a framework. It was, okay, when do we get the instructor? When do we have to sign a contract? When do we have to get the outlines, et cetera, in process? But this was for live workshops. And it was getting very frustrating in that process. So what we started to do over about 6 years ago was build a platform, which is now called Booster, leveraging the Starweaver name. And it's a process-driven, online, fully comprehensive platform that helps us, I'll call it, operationalize the process. So in parallel to our own internal need for technology, we realized we could sell what we did, which was online courses live and pre-recorded, to a broad network of Coursera and LinkedIn and Future Learning, Go1, and of course Udemy and others. And so we've evolved very fast by having leveraged technology, and the technology is what I call, it's Booster, it's called, but the purpose of the technology is to reduce what I call the frictions and to increase the creativity. And in that context, as AI has become more, since 2022, become more of a household word and name and tool set, we have integrated that into the system. The last thing I'll say before, talk further about this, but about 4 years ago, I met a fellow named Tom Seidel, who you know, and Tom is a data scientist, now works at Accenture, and Tom had this great idea. He said, well, if I do what Google Analytics does, scrape the internet, pull out all the information about what's being taught online, who's teaching online, what are the key trend words, etc., I can help an instructor.
So Teachinguide was born, yeah?
Yeah, Teachinguide was his dream.
Tell to our listeners what is Teachinguide.
So Teachinguide was originally basically Tom's effort to help instructors figure out what are the trends in the market, what keywords are trending, what courses are trending, why is a course doing well on this platform or that platform.
But Teachinguide is doing originally scraping. So
scraping.
Why is AI there?
No, that was not the AI part of it. But that's how we began to, and through APIs, accumulate a data set of now about 250,000 courses, about 105,000 instructors, all the metadata describing the instructors, the courses, the keywords, the trends. And so that sort of found the basis, that forms the basis. Now, what's nice about it, it allows us to then start analyzing which courses are successful, why are they successful? Right? So now we can start. So we have Booster on one side, we have data on the other side. Now Teachinguide, we acquired Teachinguide after Tom's focus was very much at that point helping instructors. And it's very hard to sell to consumers in general, as we know. Instructors are consumers of a type. And so Tom was not really becoming successful in selling to instructors. Some instructors like you and others will realize the value and they say, wow, this is awesome. But selling to retail, as we know, is very difficult. Very difficult. So I came along and said to Tom, look, I think this is a fantastic tool for us as an organization to help identify instructors who are highly qualified, who can, and then what we can start doing. So the systems have now been integrated. Teachinguide is now called Starweaver Analytics. It's grown in its feature set, et cetera. It's integrated into Booster because then it allows us to come up with a course idea or a requirement from one of our publisher distribution partners and instantaneously find the right instructor. What I mean by the right instructor, we use vector matching. We take the metadata from the instructor, the metadata from the course outline. We match them up and say, Anton would be fantastic for this course. Or Paul might be good for the course or whomever it is. Now, we don't know if Anton's available. If Anton, no. So for people like yourself who are onboarded in the Starweaver ecosystem, we know, we message you on the platform, et cetera. For other people that it has identified that are not, because we don't have 100,000 instructors on the system, we can then reach out to them through also their social media contacts and say we have a requirement, we pay in advance and a royalty, and so that's there. Now, so the AI part of this has begun to evolve because I love innovation. That's just been my thing. And let me step back again, because my belief is that everything you experience in life will teach you something.
Definitely.
Right? And as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Or should run. I don't know. There's both jokes in there. So one Australian bank years ago said to me, Paul, when we were doing our traditional training, we are building competency frameworks for our bankers so that we in the training department know what to train them on. And I said, and they said, would you help us do that? Have you done that before? And as any good consultant, I lied. I said, of course. And of course, before I ever signed a contract, I figured out what they needed, figured out how to do it. And so I started documenting the skill sets or competencies needed for these roles. I realized I couldn't do it in an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document. I built a system, filed a patent on that system. And so fast forward, that system has evolved into one of our AI tools.
Can you tell a little bit more about your AI tools? Definitely, AI is not the first term for you.
Sure.
What AI tools are you developing right now in Starweaver?
Yeah. So let's go back to the Starweaver Analytics for a minute. So with Starweaver Analytics, we have this huge data set, and what we can do, and we do is we do. So if Anton's going to do a course with us, Anton's a great independent instructor. He's very busy. Why should I do this course with you guys? Yes, I know you're going to pay me, but I'm here for the royalty because most instructors who realize this is a fantastic business to be in realize that if you sell the right course to the right channel,
definitely
you can do very well. And so what we've done with the data is we do two different things, and it's a bit of machine learning more than AI at this moment. So I'll describe it that way. We take the data and we say, number one, Anton's a good fit, as I mentioned. We say to Anton, here's the course outline, which you, of course, will modify and put your hands on. and adjust appropriately, is going to earn this amount of money. And we have a whole bunch of analysis.
So you have like AI match topic and instructor, you have some predictive analytics about revenue.
Exactly. Predictive analytics and what we call market metrics. And we also have a white space analysis. So shockingly, but maybe logically so, the huge platforms that are out there like Udemy and Coursera and others have such large portfolios of courses, they don't often know where the white space is. And in the old school way, the old school way would be, Anton, where do you think there are gaps? I have to go look through their whole catalog and find a gap. So this is actually a tool for finding what we call the white space in their catalog, and then identifying and constructing a course that fits that white space, finding the Antons of the world who would say, I can fill that white space and I like this. And so it's kind of filling the gaps. So
some blue ocean seeker, yeah?
Exactly. It's finding the blue ocean where there's you're not competing with as much, and you're finding and you're helping again. So it's kind of going back to Tom's original idea. It is helping the instructor, but the way we're helping the instructor is by looking at the client's problem as opposed to the instructor's problem. And therefore, we find the gap, we find the opportunity. We call them opportunities in our opportunity management dashboard, and so we make that match. Now, let me go back quickly to that idea of the Australian banks. So I built this system for the Australian banks. It was quite cool. It created an assessment functionality. It had these what we call job specs, which were the competency frameworks that married to the job. We had the ability to have an assessment, then do a gap analysis, and the company, the bank in this case, could see the strengths and weaknesses of their team. And then we went further. And this was very, I don't know, it's like I always say, you can innovate something very exciting, but be way ahead of the curve and at the wrong time. So we innovated this thing, which was spectacular. And then you could identify what courses it would recommend. So it wasn't recommending necessarily our courses. We could go through any database, match the competencies in the job, match the competencies that are taught in the course, find the gaps, find, here's 5 people of these competencies and 20 people who have those that are missing the skills. Here's the course they could teach. And so we married it up. So it was kind of a gap analysis on skills, what courses, and we used to just call it development solutions because it was a webinar. Again, there's a little bit ahead of the day. It could have been reading a book, this chapter in the book. It could have been anything. But of course, we didn't have completely all of that implemented. We had reporting, etc. So time moves forward. I go through, I talked to, this was ANZ Bank. I went to speak to the head of corporate banking in NAB, National Australia Bank. He wanted one. Commerzbank, Deutsche Bank, HSBC, everyone said, I need one. So it identified for me a huge gap in the market where organizations have thousands and tens of thousands of employees, but creating roadmaps for them is very hard. Fast forward to today. We built this tool called Journey Builder. And Journey Builder's essentially the same thesis, but instead of even having those frameworks in place, we have a tool where you can put in today any job you want to do. It could be AI for commercial baking re-engineering. It could be anything. And what the system does is it creates what I call a node and these subnodes. The nodes are, let's call them what we used to call in that old system, skill groups. It's groups of skills. And then the subnode is like what we call a competency. And it creates this thing instantaneously. It says, here's a node, subnode, subnode, a node, subnode, subnode, subnode. And it creates a kind of a mind map, right, of that job and how you would do that job. And by the way, you can take in this Journey Builder as it exists today, you can tune it. So you can say,
future agenda of the course.
It's an agenda of a course, but it's even something more, I think.
With skills, with tasks, with details.
But it doesn't even have to be a course. This is a roadmap of a career. And it could be, so you can adjust it and say, look, I have a half an hour to learn. This is intermediate or advanced. Here's my job description. You can upload a job description. So, and what it does, what's really cool is not just build that map. That's nice, interesting, but then it instantaneously through APIs, through partner platforms, finds the digital assets. And not just the digital asset that is the course. So it doesn't say, Anton, skill group 1, take these 5 courses. And you're saying, okay, that I'm not sure how much that helped me. It's like, that little Petit Prince where he swallows an elephant and you just see the big bump, but you can't digest it.
It's pretty similar to learning passes in Udemy for Business.
It's similar, but it's breaking it down to the video level. So it's getting a little more molecular.
Udemy is about video, so it's
more course related.
Can you explain how it works with different platforms? We've met each other because we had the similar interest, Udemy and Teachinguide.
Sure.
After that, you helped us to start with Coursera. After that, you said that you have FutureLearn, LinkedIn Learning, etc.
Go one,
Can you explain the difference for usual customer difference
in these platforms?
Between these platforms first, and
sure.
the second, how do they implement AI? You see all of them, so you have the experience of understanding what you are building in AI and what they are building in AI. Because if you will check these platforms, Udemy, Coursera, FutureLearn, LinkedIn Learning, maybe it's like 70% of marketplace learning market, maybe even 80 if we use Pareto rule. So what about them and what about AI inside them?
Yeah, so every AI is changing everything and everyone's trying to figure out how to adjust. So that's obvious and I think that's pretty clear. I think that some of the tools that we're building, so I always say, let me go back a little bit to say, when I think of our organization, and you've heard me say this, I think many times, I think of us as the Rolls-Royce engine company for airplanes. I don't think of us as the company that makes the airframe, Airbus. I don't think of us as the company at all to put the name on the plane. And I don't think of the company as selling the seats. And there's some electronics involved as well. And what I mean by that is we're part of a supply chain. So our partners fly those planes and put the names on the plane. We also, because of the data that I talked about, what we call the data signals, that's kind of the electronics. So we help them on some level, more so on some, less so on others, decide, hey, where should we be creating the content? Meaning, where should we be flying these planes so that students, learners, can want to get on that plane? Do I want to go from Lisbon to Paris, or is it Lisbon to Delhi, or from Paris to wherever? So that is part of the feature set we have. Now, we never think of ourselves as selling to the student. So we create products that the students use.
Yeah, and B2B.
Yeah. So each of these platforms, I think, use AI differently. I think all of them have versions of that data where they are trying to figure out what to do. We are very, I'll say, to use that analogy again, we're very focused on our engineers. You're one of our engineers. Our instructional designers, our engagement managers, the people building the engine. So what do? Like any company, and I don't know Rolls-Royce well, of course, but I assume, and I can imagine, that they are creating tools to build the engine their way, right? They don't just go to, a DIY store and say, well, give me what you got. They build tools for that purpose. So our tools are built to help you and other instructors, like the data signals and the journey builder. We have something called Design Pilot, which helps build outlines in a really cool way, help build storyboards, etc. So that's how we're using it primarily.
What do you see on the market?
So in the market, I see a heavy usage, for example, and some of the companies are moving in this direction, so they're all different. So let's use Coursera as an example. Coursera has a very large university base, as does, and the corporate base, and obviously that's one of their big focuses. Udemy is not university focused, right? Go1 is not university focused. Go1 has what you call the small middle enterprise market, very big player in that market. FutureLearn is very similar to Coursera in that regard, different market footprint, whereas Coursera is 160 or so million students. FutureLearn has more like 20 million, but they're heavily Asia and Europe based, and they grew out of university relationships there. So each of these players, I think Coursera is quite advanced in terms of what they're doing. They're using something they call Coach to help instructors create exercises, activities, helping an instructor then, I wouldn't say grade, but respond to the submissions. So if, activity-based learning, as we all know, is the best way to learn, right? Give someone a project. When we did workshops way back in the day, it was not really PowerPoint presentations. It was some of that. And then now you break up into a group of 5. Here's a case. Let's all present that. So that, I think, to where I see AI being used by Coursera and others, is to help really make it what I call a live learning. So online on-demand learning is not live, But if it's done well, it can feel alive. It can feel engaging and immersive, like the courses you've done.
Did you test any AI assistants by these platforms? Udemy AI assistants?
Yeah, we have been testing some of the coach systems. I think that's kind of like, the chat bots or versions of those AI systems. They're getting better. They have to be trained on more data, of course, to be responsive to the student. I mean, Khan Academy, which we do not work with, was one of the earliest users of OpenAI. It was one of the test beds of OpenAI. And Sal Khan talks about this a lot in his book. And so I think that there are a lot of directions. I think that some are focused on the student side, like the chatbot that would help a student. In case of, I don't know if you're aware of this, and maybe the readers or listeners are or not, that a lot of the, we all know that AI can give you, quote, an answer. Wrong, right, hallucination, something, right? It'll, instead of the old school Google, where I always like to think of it as the straw man, which used to be you do a search and the straw man goes like this, go find something. Now it's synthesized it into something.
Yeah, you will get some answer, nobody knows.
And then you have to prompt it, and you have to be good at prompt engineering, all that stuff. So some of the organizations are very focused on that. I was going to say about Khan Academy, if a student says, what's the answer, the bot will not say, and I haven't used it extensively, but this is what I've read and heard from Sal Khan, is that it will then prompt them with another question. So, or if they say, I don't understand how calculus is relevant to me, the bot might say, well, consider, and I could give you an example, but consider you have a tuna fish can, you're trying to maximize the surface, minimize the volume because you're trying to sell less and make it look bigger. Oh, so the student can get an appreciation of why this is relevant. So I think it's in the case of the student side, I don't think it's giving answers. Definitely. I think it's prompting questions. It's prompting further, I'm sure there's others that are just trying to give people answers, but no good academic institution, no organization that cares about people really developing skills is just going to give them answers. And so the philosophy I have is like that. Yeah,
it's in TikTok philosophy. You get the adrenaline and other.
And you get excited about this, right?
You're excited in just a minute, and you're excited that this is answer, and you are not fact-checking it.
Yeah. And so with the student side, they're focused on then prompting more engagement. And in our side, which is obviously, and I think the Coursera side, I've seen less on some of the other platforms. Maybe they have fewer resources dedicated to this, and now everyone's going to have tools.
Some
AI. But in my world, it's all about empowering. Now, and I'll give you other examples of, as you know, there's some lots of platforms which I won't mention the names of them. We all know who they are, which basically are trying to replace the instructor. That's not my world. And it's not my world because...
It will be my next question.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
If you talk about your experience, it's maybe 10 years longer than mine. I've started educational business 12 years ago, and it was offline school. In 2017, we closed offline and had just online school. Right now, I've got a lot of guests in this studio who are talking about AI agents. I understand that my AI agent can maybe my Portuguese teacher, my digital marketing teacher, etc. And if we talk about our today's reality, offline is VIP option of education. So if you need to learn something, you are going online, you are going to webinars, you are going to Udemy, Coursera, etc. to get skills fast or read online book, etc. But if you want to have like VIP experience, you will get the person, you will get the corporate training, you will bring it from US to Australia, and it's still the VIP feature. But as I see it right now, we are switching to new reality where one AI agent will teach you banking, another AI agent will teach you Indian, and etc. And in this case, online will be maybe some expensive feature. Offline will transform in a very VIP feature. So how do you see this from your much longer educational perspective? Is it the same or it's different?
No, I think that, let me maybe take it from a little bit of a different angle, but the same ultimate thrust. I think of AI as a tool. Now, if we were sitting here and I actually know what it was like to use a typewriter and have to explain to some of my tech guys what a typewriter looked like, where there were keys that were flipping up like this and getting caught, right? And so we're old enough to have seen those types of things. Every new evolution people think, oh my God, my job's going away. The word processor, now all the secretaries who used to work mostly for law firms, where they would, the last to adopt this, because we're not going to take our job away, they realized they were repeating a lot of unnecessary work. So for me, AI is a tool, and there's going to be the winners and the losers, those who know how to use it and those who don't. And we all think the same way about this, right? And there's going to be people who never think it's going to be big. It's just going to try to. So we're going to have to adjust our whole mindset. And I think that's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is going to be educating people that you have to realize this is a tool. And I'll use, my father was a doctor, my mother was a teacher, and we used to we had a basement filled with tools. My father loved woodworking. My mother loved ceramics. So we had all sorts of things in the basement. And, there was the old school drill that looked like this. Then there was the electric drill, or the power drill. And, the power drill, you could make more mistakes faster. Right. You could say, well, right. You could just make drill.
You can make more
mistakes faster. You can make more mistakes faster.
And so if you know how to learn, you will learn from this.
And you have to be thoughtful about it. So you have to learn the tool. Like you could learn that in 2 seconds I can change the drill bit, and maybe I shouldn't have drilled that hole, the big one first. So I think that it's about the mindset adjustment, recalibrating mindsets. I think it's about saying to people, you have two choices. This is one choice. You're either going to be completely left behind, or you're going to understand to whatever extent you need it for whatever careers you want to be in. It could be art. It could be screenwriting. I know the screenwriters are up in arms about this, but the reality is it's here. It's not going away. It's the car. There was the horse. It's all changing, and you have a choice. You can either be on the train or off the train. And if you're on the train, it means you need to take control of the tool. Human mind, it can be empowered by this stuff, or it can be disempowered. You can feel like, oh my God, it does everything I do. I'll never be successful. Or you can say, wow, look what it's doing. How do I use this? And so I think it's heavily important for our part of what we do as educators and people in the industry to help remagnetize the thinking that it's not a threat, it's an opportunity. I know that sounds like business school or something, but it's really an opportunity to redo the way you work. And we're doing a lot of courses for LinkedIn and for Coursera and for all these other platforms you've mentioned and others. And the courses are about applications. So yes, at core, you need to know if you're a business person, how does it affect business? Project manager, if you're a software developer. What my software developers have said, something which I found quite fascinating. They say, quite a bit of an exaggeration, you don't really know how to code. You don't need to know how to code anymore. You need to know the business problem you're solving.
Definitely.
Right? And it codes, and then let me go back 20 years plus when we were doing those training courses for Bank of America and the tech guys. They knew coding. They didn't understand the business. And the senior guys, I'll just tell a quick story. The senior guys in the bank said, we need an advanced course on mortgage-backed securities. And we said, you sure? So we took a course, we did it, and the instructor, I said, I'm a little concerned. So he started out with a bunch of acronyms, IOPO strips.
Definitely.
It's like, there was dead silence in the room, dead silence till 10 o'clock. We took a break. I said, can we roll back to what is a mortgage? Mortgage-backed securities, right? Portfolios of mortgages, blah, blah, blah. And the instructor said, who has a mortgage in the room? Hands went up slowly. And then we went, does anyone know how when you pay your mortgage payment, what portion is interest and principal? Does you know what it looks like on a curve, like mathematically? Do you know that if I put a bunch of these mortgages with different lengths and together, they're going to perform? So you get it. So my point is you've got to start with a fundamental understanding of the business and the technology in the case of AI, and then you can go fast up the curve. And I think what happens is most people want to jump to AI and some esoteric application if they're not understanding what prompt engineering is. And I think that's, so where I see this being a huge opportunity, so we do a variety of these courses in applications to industry, project managers, product managers, GenAI in litigation support, GenAI in clinical research, medical records and drug research. So there's just 1,000 different subjects, right? And but I think that everyone in those industries who let's use biomedical research or life sciences, you've got a lot of super smart scientists. So they'll know the science. They won't necessarily have that kind of lateral perspective as to what can these tools do and how well. And I think the opportunity, which does not take away jobs, is to say, I think that, as you said before, you can look at the AI as a generic thing, but in every one of these domains, every one of the data models, the large language models, will need to be trained in that domain.
Definitely.
And it'll be trained in the broad-based data sets. It'll be trained on internal company sets. And so it's not so when we now go and ask a question about ChatGPT and it gives us some very generic answer, it's better than a poke in the eye, as they say. But if you were asking that question and you're in that clinical research area or you're in manufacturing or you're in coding, it's not going to give you exactly what you need. So I always say we're on like the 1 inch yard line of a 100-yard or a 100-meter field. And we are just beginning where we start seeing the penetration in industry, in business, in arts, in all sorts of fields, in your field of social media and marketing and all the things that you do. And I think that the power is going to be the people who have said, look, I have to understand the fundamentals. I don't need to, I as a business person do not have the skills to understand the code. I don't need to understand it, but I need to understand strategically what it's logically doing.
For you.
Yeah, what it's logically doing, what it's not doing. And then it's a tool. I'm not the tool. It's a tool. I'm not a tool. I'm not the tool. Therefore, I control it. It doesn't control me. And if you sit there, oh my God, it's going to control me.
We were talking about one of the previous guests about that all of us are becoming the managers of AI.
Yes.
We are AI operators that are managing this stuff.
And that's a mindset. That's a really important mindset. Because if the mindset is, it's telling me what to do, I think you're going to end up with a lot of very mistaken decision making. But if you realize that critical thinking is involved, which is an important skill, obviously, and it gives you something and you say, I'll give you, sorry, this is a little bit of diversion. So I was driving across the country, moving from the West Coast to the East Coast for a few months. And I was driving past windmills and I looked up and I thought, what's the ROI on an investment in a windmill? So I'm talking to ChatGPT as I'm driving and it tells me, it does an incredible analysis. And I said, in Western United States, and I was in Montana, I think at the time, or one of the states, beautiful. And it gave me an analysis. It did the analysis, assumptions about investment, assumptions about wind speeds and all this kind of stuff. And it came up with like a 1.7% return on investment. And as your eyebrows raised, I said, and I literally wrote really ? That's all I did. And it inferred that I didn't like its answer. It didn't seem credible to me. And then it redid the analysis. And I said, have you considered, and I forgot what I asked it, about, the speed of the wind in the west versus the east versus offshore. And it did another analysis. So my point here, and it kept up increasing the ROI. So my point is you have to be the logical person here. It's not a person, right? It's just sending you data and information in a format. You have to be the one who goes, that makes no sense to me at all. And I think that's in everything that you get from AI. You have to be able to, as a critical thinker, say, this is not logical. And that's where the human comes in. That's where the engineers come in. That's where the students who, and it's cool about the AI, if you ask it for an answer, it won't give you the answer. And as a student, it'll give you another question. That's the cool stuff. So I think that the potential, as I said, I think we're in the 1 inch line of a massive, massive field. And, but it's really in our interest, our obligation to help others become critical thinkers about what it is and what it's not, and to question it, to push back, to not assume it's there was a film called The Gods Must Be Crazy, where a Coke bottle, if you remember the film, drops into an African desert, and then suddenly they think the gods have sent this to them. And that's what I think some people think about AI. It's just been handed to us, and it's, therefore we have to use it. We have to believe some things about it. It's a tool. It's the electric drill in a supercharged way.
It's interesting tool because if you talk about Google all time, it exists, tried to build like a universal application. If you have any online task, you need to go to Google. Google definitely didn't do it, but what is happening with ChatGPT right now? ChatGPT is built in a universal tool. So my English is not perfect. I want to ask something, how to politely address to native speaker from America. I will go to ChatGPT. I will chat it with voice and it give me a possibility. I've already created my GPT, which helps me to teach Portuguese, etc. So in one GPT, we already have other tools. But if you come back to the question of instructors, you've told that you definitely don't believe in AI instructors. But if we come back to challenges, they definitely are. I'm in different instructors communities for different platforms. And on the one hand, there are excited instructors like me. You can create video content with HeyGen. You can dub your voice with 11 Labs. You can write scripts with ChatGPT, etc. It's one hand. And another hand, it's about instructors who are afraid of this because all basic education will be definitely changed by this. So AI agent for any topic will make the basic content better than this instructor. How do you see this? What challenges, what benefits? Let's see it from teacher's side. A teacher at school, instructor at Udemy, Coursera, elsewhere. So how it works about advantages and disadvantages?
Well, look, I think there's only advantages. The disadvantages is everything that technology touches, it changes. Right. And so, I'll tell you a quick funny story where I was talking to my tech people and I said, do you know how a typewriter used to work? And I explained it a little bit to them. And I said, do you know that when you used to have to write in a typewriter to type on paper, you had to feed the paper into this thing, and then you had to line it up. And I was saying, you literally line it up and you're listening to me thinking I've landed from another planet. I'm an alien. I'm the real alien. And I said, if you didn't line it up straight, when you typed, the page would go off at an angle. And so that's a trivial example of something that you never experience today. And most people who don't, and I think, by the way, one of the important things for everyone today, including the instructors, is you need to be a historian. You need to see where it came, and where it is, and where it could go, right? So
that will be the next question.
Yeah, and so I think that from an instructor's point of view, it's only good. It's bad if you think you've got a set of PowerPoint slides and you're going to teach them live in a class that you're going to fly from New York to Lisbon or Lisbon to Sydney, Australia. That's bad because it's not going to happen anymore the way it is, right? And if you think that a flat PowerPoint slide, which has your fancy builds, which were one line at a time, is sufficient, it's not. Because education, as I think we all know, especially in the world of professional education, needs to be a version of what is known as edutainment, right? It needs to be engaging. As I like to say, in college, the instructor grades you, or the professor grades you. In professional education, the learner grades the instructor. So you have either, because if you,
it's definitely true.
If you're a brainiac and you teach the most esoteric stuff and you do not engage the people in that classroom, like I was describing the mortgage class, that class would have gotten the worst ratings on the planet, notwithstanding the boss saying they needed advanced mortgage-backed securities course, but no one had an idea what a mortgage was, and this guy was going off into a deep end that they were not prepared to go into. So I think you have to be aware that the student is grading you, the learner is grading you with your feedback forms, et cetera, and your ratings online. And so therefore, you need to do a version of engaging tools. So I think the downside is life changes.
Definitely.
Yesterday is different than tomorrow, and it's going to happen much faster. And so if you're willing to be agile and you're willing to pivot, the opportunities, they're pretty much unlimited. And if you pivot faster than everyone else and you keep ahead, is that like that joke that someone says, if you're being chased by a bear, I don't have to run faster than the bear. I have to run faster than you, right? And so it's sort of the same thing with AI. I don't have to run faster than but the people who are not going to change will find their work either out of work, they will find themselves in a small educational place, which they're probably not ultimately. Well, I shouldn't say that. Some people might be very happy doing that. There might be a niche of that happens. The world changes fast. The world's a big place. Education is the driver of change and success, right? For people, for humans. And there's billions of people who are not getting a fraction of the education they need and should get in all sorts of countries around the world, including the United States, right? Not so-called one of the most developed countries, not getting the education they should, and notwithstanding the countries that don't have that infrastructure we have in the States. So I think that the answer to the question is the opportunity is unlimited for an instructor who says, I'm in. Now, for the instructor who says, I'm out, I can't tell you because I don't believe in that world. I don't believe in a world. But there are certainly people who are going to teach in colleges or teach in classrooms, and they're going to have a friend who needs them to teach their course the old school way. And so, and I think that there's also the modalities are changing. We talked about that with the little journey builder. The modalities in, Notebook LM, which is the Google platform, blew my mind the other day. We fed it an outline to our business.
We can give you your book or my book, and it will chat like our podcast.
It's fantastic. And yes, and so you think, are podcasts going away? I don't think so. I think they're changing. I think what we feed that tool, if that's the one of the tools, there'll be many more that evolve. We're going to have to learn to feed it differently, right? No one goes now and says, I need to line up the paper when I type on my computer. No one says, when I was in college, had, I think it was 250 characters I can type, and then it forgot everything else. When I hit return, it typed it. No one does that anymore, but that was the state of affairs. So I think that we're going to have to say, oh my gosh, well, how do I use this notebook LM? I love that idea. And maybe it's taking books and turning them into different formats. I think that, just as an example there, I said this to one of my colleagues the other day. I said, if you look at e-learning, which has a low engagement rate in a traditional asynchronous format, we talked about the live versus the asynchronous. In the asynchronous format, depending on where it is, depending on how much edutainment is involved in an engagement, 15%, 20, 25%. If you're a great instructor and you've given exercises, better. If you've given case studies to read, not self-serve, you got to go read it. If you've given projects that you could grade, hence the idea around Coach with Coursera, if you've seen that, then if you get the chatbot there, you're going to get better engagement. So I think that the question is, if you just quickly say, if Notebook LM produces a podcast, if I had a bet, a traditional e-learning course, just video-based course, let's say it has 20% engagement, 25% if we're lucky, I would bet you there's 80%. And it's because it's conversational. It's because it feels like real people. Like this is probably a higher engagement by the listener because you react, I react, I'm a person, real person, right? You're a real person, I think, for now anyway.
Right now I definitely the real person, but HeyGen already gives me possibility to implement my avatar in Zoom call.
But it's an avatar, but it's your directed avatar, right? It's really you, but it made it digital. Okay, but it's you. Now, if it started doing things that were not Anton, and you're like, wait a minute, delete, you're going to write, because it's not your person. It's not your, now the person may be digital and you put your hand through it and it no longer exists.
You can call it a digital copy.
But it's your brand.
Yeah.
But it's your brand and it's your message.
Yeah.
So I think that these tools are all about empowering educators. I think it's empowering developers. I think it's empowering designers, of course, in every imaginable field. And as I said, we all know there's a choice. Get on the train, or just watch it leave the station and wait.
Say bye. In this podcast, we are collecting AI tools. What are your favorite AI tools that you use in business and in your personal life? ChatGPT happens to be great because, I can ask a question. I almost don't do searches anymore. Honestly, it just makes no sense to me. I happen to use Chat. I think that one is missing, but I use ChatGPT for transcription of what I'm saying. Because it's a masterful job of putting commas, and then I copy that and I text it. So that happens to be one of my core tools. I'm not the person in my business anyway that does most of the actual tools. I'm the one who product develops
the design pilot, the journey builder, the market metrics. So I'm creating more of those tools. But for my use of them is really fairly narrow in terms of what my requirements are. But I see the potential, like Notebook LM is, I can see the massive potential, and I'm starting to use that pretty heavily. But when I see a tool like that, and maybe it's just my mindset, I've always been an innovator in some ways in the businesses I'm in, because I love technology since the 90s when I first got involved. I was involved in publishing. I was involved in hardware and software businesses. And then when those merged, everyone said, oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh, this is a real nightmare. It wasn't a happy moment. And the thing is the similar today. Oh my gosh, it's going to take away. No, it's going to radically change what you're doing. And so my tools are mostly, when I look at a tool, I think of what the application of it could be to my world of the business that I'm building. So it's less about me using the tool for an answer, but our team uses all sorts of, Canva tools and all sorts of Frame.io tools and things. But again, we're very much, restricted. In fact, from most of our distribution publishing clients as it exists today, from using AI to create the core content. So we position the AI we use as tools to help the instructor, the instructional designer, the what we call an engagement manager or producer, or the operations team, obviously. And so it helps in what I say is remove the frictions and increase the creativity. Right? Remove the frictions and increase the creativity of the instructor, of the expert, not just the instructor,
Sounds
of
like
all the
a plan.
experts. Yeah.
Paul, it was a great pleasure to have you in our studio.
I appreciate
you for sharing
it.
your experience and your journey in EdTech and how it's transformed and how AI helped. So have a great day. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, put like, ask questions to Paul. Paul, will you answer the questions?
I will answer questions. Please shoot them in English, ideally, although now we're speaking a little bit of Portuguese here.
Yeah, you
You're
can
learning
use
faster than I am.
ChatGPT to translate in other languages, so it's also a hit that we can use. Guys, don't forget to subscribe, ask your questions, and see you in the next GenAI Revolution podcast.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Paul.